You are now tuned in to People City Propaganda. I'm your host, Jason Reedy, organizer with People City Council. And in the last week, I've gotten kicked out of LA City Council, the Board of Supervisors, and the LA Police Commission.
Wow. That's a hat trick.
That's the hat trick, baby. I spent a Saturday in Tijuana where I saw a zonkey up close and personal.
Zonkey. Shout out to all my zonkies out there.
What's a zonkey?
It's a zebra and donkey hybrid, I'm assuming.
Well, it's literally a donkey that they just painted black and white.
First. Okay. First they did it to the dogs. Now they're doing it to donkeys? Oh, my gosh.
I thought, so this wasn't, they didn't actually breed them together?
No, they did not.
Oh, okay.
No.
Because I know that there's some, like, you can breed some of those animals together.
Yeah, they exist.
Okay, so they were just like, fuck it, we're just going to paint it.
Hey.
Spend $100.
Yep, and get the tourists in, and they took the pictures.
So now was your 1-year-old taken in by it?
He was not.
No, okay.
He's like, I know that's fake.
Okay, wow. All right.
Show me the real zebra.
Yeah, I showed him actually a Coach purse the other day. He's like, that shit's fake. He has a very discerning eye.
He might have that eye.
Yeah.
His mom used to work at Buffalo Exchange. She used to be a buyer. So.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, she's like, yeah, the cross stitching is all off.
And yeah, last night I dabbled in some vegan cookies from Zoe's, which is a spot in Cheviot Hills located inside of a gas station. Good food at a gas station reminds me of the Valley, and when I'm thinking of Valley, I think of one person in particular.
Wow.
Last time we were on the pod together, I did my co-host a disservice by not crafting an intro for him, so let's put some respect on Albert's name.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Albert is the host of 818s and Heartbreak.
Correct.
Oops, All Bangers.
That's right, yeah.
And this very podcast.
Yep.
He's a brown kid from the Valley who was once the most powerful person at Media City Center Mall Food Court in Burbank. Okay. He is the creator of the Tuesday Triple Bill, where you eat Burger King, McDonald's, and Carl's Jr. in the same day. Okay. You can catch him at bowling alleys near you with 15-pound balls in tow, and he's in search of his soulmate. He's on the lookout for an E.T. Alf predator type of love, is my understanding.
Yeah, definitely.
He's watched The Sopranos 6 times all the way through.
All the way through,
okay.
Yeah.
And he ran for CD13, where he got over 2,000 people to vote for him during the primary. And he's founder of People City Council. Albert, how are you doing today?
What's really good, man? Wow, that was so nice. And I feel like, I told you a while back, I'm like, I feel like at a certain point after we talk for like a bit, I kind of always go back to the same, like, the Valley, Burger King, fast food. Like, I have these things that I like touching on. So thank you for that, man. I really appreciate that. And
absolutely.
I'm a guy who hosts a lot of podcasts. And I did run, I will say the proudest thing about my run for city council is that, like, the people who voted for me knew they were voting for me. It wasn't like, he's not Mitch O'Farrell. He said, his name sounds interesting. Or his name is near the top. It was like, no, I like Albert Corrado. I like what he stands for. So for me, I'll take my 2,000 votes and say, hey, like, they knew they were voting for somebody who was with it and not just like, he seems like better than the guy who's in there, which, we can't say for other people, but hey. Thank you for the intro.
This is true. Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
I saw a tweet of yours. Does every Jesus fish come with a side of martyr sauce? That's a tweet that got no likes or retweets from maybe about 10 years on your Twitter. I dug it up.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
It deserves another life. So.
Wait, did I really? I honestly, and I feel like I remember a lot of tweets I've done. I don't remember that at all.
I'll send it to you later.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Well, did you see anything else that was like terrible or anything?
I might have. Not other tweets that I'll put out.
Sure.
Anyway,
well, yeah. The answer is yes. And martyr sauce. I mean, that's a great pun. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Yes.
I'm gonna tweet it tomorrow.
Okay.
And so when this comes out, people will see if it had any effect.
There we go.
So we got no likes. So hopefully it gets at least this is like 2 likes right here.
There we go.
And I have actually access to a few accounts, so it'll get like 6 likes, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll get my like without without an account.
Yeah. Well, stop LAPD spying.
I'll take a bullhorn.
Yeah. Thank you.
And show my like.
Thank you.
So what is People City Propaganda? It's a passion project covering Los Angeles politics, pigs, pork chops, organizing in the movement. We normally record our podcast from our spot, the Robinson Space, but for today's installment, we're coming to you from the Burger King's living quarters.
That's right.
I'm sitting where Albert's Twitter fingers fly, or should I say X fingers fly? And who's on the pod today? We're being joined by Hamid Khan from the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition and learning about his journey in the history of the coalition. I'm about to put some respect on your name, Hamid. You immigrated from Pakistan in 1979. As you were once the founder and former executive director of the South Asian Network, where you helped to create the first grassroots community-based organization in Los Angeles committed to informing and empowering thousands of South Asians in Southern California to act as agents of change and eliminating biases, discrimination, and injustices. Hamid is also the founding member of the Los Angeles Taxi Workers Alliance, and he is also the founder and lead organizer of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, a community organization founded in 2011 that works to build community power towards abolishing police surveillance. The coalition is rooted in Skid Row, a neighborhood here in downtown Los Angeles, based out of Los Angeles Community Action Network. They believe that creating a world without police surveillance requires uplifting the expertise and political power of the communities most harmed by policing. Collective study, community-based research, direct action are crucial to their work. Decolonizing quote-unquote expertise about surveillance and policing, and building a robust and responsive culture of resistance to police. Hamid, thank you for coming on PCP.
Thank you.
Damn, you are so good at the intros, and like I never know what you're gonna say, but it's always good. And also, listen, the word legend is thrown around, I think, pretty like willy-nilly these days, but to me, you're a legend, man. They're like a, if there's like a list of people who I hold in high regard in the city, you're on it, man. So thank you for all the work that you've done, and thank you for coming to my apartment and sitting in this uncomfortable chair.
No. I'd rather be here than be in a formal studio or something. This is home.
This is more, yeah. I mean, the equipment is good, but the pod studio, we are spoiled by that. It is really nice in there. It is. But thank you for being on.
Of course, it's an honor.
When we told people you were coming on, there's a lot of excitement. The number one question was, what is your social security number? No. No.
Maybe that's the only encryption that I know.
There we go. But yeah, Hamid, we wanted to bring you on the pod today to talk about you as a person and also the work that you do with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. So, I want you to treat this like a therapy session. No, I'm kidding. But
you will be charged for it.
All right.
But I was wondering, if you could just kind of take us through the early parts of your life, maybe some of the earliest memories that you had, and kind of your journey up until you came to the United States.
Sure. But first of all, thank you. I mean, it's such an honor to be here. And of course, Jason is also on the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition's coordinating team as well. So I really appreciate all the efforts and everything that Jason does. And now, just this multi-generational journey, we have a beautiful baby.
We do.
Who's going to carry on the work. So, well, let's see about myself. So I was born in Pakistan, and I was the first generation after the partition happened in 1947, when India was partitioned to Pakistan and India. I grew up in a family. I was born in Pakistan myself, but my parents had migrated from India. My dad was born in what is now the Pakistani side of what used to be India, and my mom, her family had originally immigrated from Afghanistan to India several generations ago. But she grew up in India. So I think for my own growth and development, in a sense, my emotional nourishment and political nourishment came from these very intense conversations in family as a baby and growing up in that as a child around the trauma of partition, around state violence, around how the state orchestrates, communal violence. What does actually, we hear about divide and rule, what does it really mean? And how, when daggers come out and swords come out, what happens? Where 10 million people, 15 million migrated at the time, 2 million people were murdered and murdered each other as the colonizers, the English, kind of just sat there. And the little bit of history in that is that when India was partitioned, the boundaries that were drawn were done by a commission that was formed. It was called the Radcliffe Commission. And Radcliffe had never been to India. So this is how our lives were sort of like, determined, and where we were and our fate was sealed in a way. So that is some of my earliest orientation towards just how state operates, what is state violence like, what are the ways that, communities' lives are derailed and recreated as a way to create animosities and seat that animosity amongst people. And then, growing up, I remember one of my first political actions on the streets. I was 11 years old, coming back from school. This is when one of the military dictators in Pakistan, this is going back in 1968, was toppled. And, but I saw a whole bunch of students and these, as we would call them, strikes and rallies and protests. And as I'm walking home, I hear these gunshots. And I turn around and I see this body of a student rising and blood coming out of his mouth. And that was when the cops had murdered a student. That was like my first time kind of watching something like that. And then, but it also was you never forget these things, was an experience of how community building happens and how we watch each other's back. So all of a sudden the people start running. And next thing you know, I am kind of looking at this, and then next thing you know, my body is being lifted by another young college student who's like, get the heck out of here, right? So really kind of watching out for others as well who could be vulnerable to those things. And I'm like, okay, I'm going home. So then I started running, but then I started running backwards because I wanted to soak in what was going on. Sure. And then, as they say, the rest is history. So have been sort of politically, both whether or not directly or indirectly, being very engaged. And, how you learn about the political frameworks and all that happened at a very early age.
So I was going to say that, I was going to ask you what was this sort of inciting incident into like you getting involved with this stuff, but I feel like it's in your blood, right? You were born into this world where things were just so messed up. And so you were kind of like, in a way, kind of had no choice but to be confronted with those things right away. So that's interesting because, you talk to different people who are like, oh, this happened and it got me involved. Whereas you kind of were born into this world and just were like, yeah, this is all I've ever known.
Right. I mean, that was very much there. And I think when people talk about political engagement or being in politics, somehow it sort of gets very narrowed and limited to partisan politics. Like there's a party you belong to, or you engage in, and you support a particular person or a party. But just as growing up in Pakistan, survival is political. It's all political. So when they say the personal is the political, like, whether you're going to get water or not, because everything was rationed. I remember going out and we would have a ration card, going and getting sugar, or just having wheat coming from the village and taking it out to where they would turn it into flour and all of that. And then water was rationed. It was come in maybe about 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, and 2 hours at night. So you had to really kind of just schedule your bath and everything else as well. Same with the electricity. So I think the kind of like having a critical view and an analysis of the system, as Albert, you're saying, you're born into it. And so that's what my earlier years were. Then I was I never went to school in the U.S. Okay. So all my high school and my years of college. So in college I was involved in student politics, and then migrated to the U.S.
So can I ask you though? I want to get a little. Just when you were younger, like teenage years or even younger, like what were you doing for fun? Like what was that social life like? What was life like growing up where you did? And what did that look like as opposed, because I could tell you about my teenage years and like, oh, we're hanging out at the Walmart and the mall or whatever. But what was that version of that to you?
I mean, just obviously there were no malls or anything like that, but, I started smoking hashish when I was 14.
Hey, shout out hashish.
So that was the way to go, and then through that, just ke aate hai ghaib se mazami khayal mein. So you started kind of just almost like these inspirations come through, various things as well, and now you just got to form your own experiences too. But I grew up in this very thick sort of city neighborhood where we would live in these flats, as they called them. And then, growing up, we were just playing with the kids. But one thing I do remember from the earliest days that my mom telling other moms, because, and this is the neighborhood where you would go and mom would say, go get, borrow some sugar from the neighbors or this thing from the neighbors and we'll give them back. Yeah. So my mom would tell other moms too that keep your kids away from this one. Because, and we would get into trouble, like whatever little trouble as like, 9, 10-year-old or whatever has been. So I think that's always been there. But yeah, just kind of hanging out with friends. I was never the studious type. I mean, I do remember in class 7, as we call them there, I came home and announced and told my mom that I was the youngest of 6 kids, that I'm not going to go to school. And of course, immediately I got the biggest slap on my face. And as mom, and before she could take her shoe off and continue on, she goes, "You motherfucker, I'm not going to feed you." I'm like, "Oh shit, what am I going to eat?" so I almost sort of like, just forced myself into formal education. But a lot of it was on the street. A lot of it was like my education is really from the street.
So you were raised by the streets, is that what you're saying?
I was pretty much, I mean, I'm not claiming that I was so poor that I lived on the streets, but my growth and my nourishment and my intellectual intellect was very much influenced by the street and watching things happening in real time as well.
Did you ever play any sports or anything growing up?
I did, just did some swimming, played some ping pong or table tennis, but also other things as well, like, field hockey and cricket. Which were the sports that they played in Pakistan, but yeah, I was active.
You ever play any like 2-day long cricket games?
No, those test matches for 5 days. No, man, none of that. Gotcha. But there was always like interlane like a street. There were always these rivalries over there, so we'll be playing, and the whole neighborhood would be watching, and all of that. So that's the world that you grew up in. Yeah.
So you make your way to the United States.
I make my way to the United States.
What made you choose the United States?
Well, so now this is also the time that Pakistan, with its own economic issues and crisis, any of the future that you would see, just happening first. Initially, it was like a mass export, as they would call, of labor to the Middle East. So that was kind of drying up, and then people would go to Europe, and then the next thing was to go to the U.S. Now, one thing I always wanted to do as a kid, which I couldn't afford, was to be a pilot.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So
you're a fly boy. You love to fly.
I love to fly, and then I ended up flying for 28 years in the U.S.
What?
So
you knew this?
So
wow.
I was also a commercial pilot. I mean, my last gig was flying a 767 as a captain. So, and I've flown 747, 727, 757s. My first, when I made captain, this was in an old DC-8, this 4-engine transcontinental jet. So that's what really and I was one of the lucky ones. Now I say that as a way to get a visa and come over here, at that time. And then, I was undocumented for several years. Actually, I was flight instructing while I was undocumented.
Wow.
Now imagine that, Hamid Khan coming from Pakistan and just saying at immigration that I want to get my pilot's license. That's the last time I'll have my feet on the ground. I'll end up in Guantanamo.
Damn. Wait, what years were you flying?
I was then started doing my pilot training, got my student pilot license, my commercial license, my flight instructor license, and then was flight instructing for a while. And then I got into commercial flying in 1987.
Wow.
And then
I was born.
Okay. Wow, damn.
That's when my daughter Nadia was born too. Yeah. So, and then I flew, but I was also organizing as well.
Sure.
So my first organizing was in the mid-1980s, and this was against a chain of restaurants. At the time, there was a chain of restaurants called the Red Onion.
Okay.
So, and then I remember a couple of friends, Pakistani guys, came over. This is 1985 or something, and they said that there's clearly there's racial discrimination going on. They're not letting us into this nightclub. So I was like, okay, well, let's go back the next Saturday and check it out. And of course, went back the next Saturday and saw it was very much in your face and clearly. So that's when I started talking to the people. There were brown and black young men and women who were being denied entry. Organized that, and there was a whole thing in the LA Times about that too. And I remember we just ended up filing a class action lawsuit, and the Red Onion restaurant chains ended up losing their liquor license.
Ooh.
And then they had the settlements was at that time that, they paid $300,000 or something like that into the United Negro College Fund and various other things. And at the end of it all, the chain just shut down. So that was my first organizing gig.
Fuck the Red Onion, I guess.
I had not heard of it.
So let me ask you, did you deal with any bullshit after 9/11, being a pilot and all that? I mean...
Yeah, I mean, not with my stint was flying for UPS
Gotcha.
And I'd flown passengers before that as well. But no, I mean, I did. I mean, at the workplace, none. I mean, I I can't claim that, there was discrimination. Actually, there was quite a bit of people making space. But I remember, because I was already organizing as well. So I had founded South Asian Network by 1990. So I was organizing full time and I was flying full time as well. So by the time 9/11 hit, South Asian Network or SAN was very much prepared. But to your question, I remember in July of 2002, just 8 months after that, I was on a flight to New York for a human rights conference. And this was the same airplane that I was flying, 767s. This was United 767. I'm sitting in my seat, and the flight attendant comes and starts asking me questions. If I'm sitting in my seat, and I'm like, here's my boarding pass. But then after a few times, I said, okay, well, who called me in? Because I knew the FAA directives, and this lead flight attendant just kind of whispers in my ear that, see that blonde woman just a couple rows up sitting by the window, you made her uncomfortable.
Jesus Christ.
So I was like, okay. So then she was like, well, we'll give you a seat in first class. I said, no, just leave me alone. I just want to sleep. And ironically, when I just woke up from a nap and I felt somebody standing, and this was the captain of the flight. So he had walked out of the cockpit, and this was a black guy. So this was an interesting, ironic moment. So we kind of just exchanged looks like, I know, and you know that what has happened. So,
yes, the Karen has reported on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then, my landlord later would tell me that the FBI would come and visit.
Wow.
The apartment that I was living in Long Beach. At my workplace, the FBI went in. They visited my house as well, and but clearly I was organizing at the time, and you never open a door for these fools.
And she probably called the fucking police once she saw the pilot was black, like this horrible lady. Like, just sorry, that was a bad joke.
No.
But these are just the kind of people who I guess they've always been the same. They've always been the fucking same.
Yeah. But I think one of the stories when I was undocumented was I was flying a company's airplane. It was a trucking company, and this was out of Riverside. And the owner one day says, "Hey, we need to go to Mexico." So for some business kind of thing, right? So this is 1984 or something like that. So I'm like sitting at home, like, oh shit, this will be a one-way trip. How am I going to enter back into the U.S.?
Yeah.
So I called him up. And I says, hey, you know what, Buck? I'm from Pakistan. And the Pakistani government and the Mexican government don't have good relationships. Okay. So he says, you're fucking illegal, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, okay, well, let's try and take care of it. But anyways, I mean, you have these things. And, I was, for about 6-7 years while I was flying, I was undocumented until I got my green card. And then, then I flew for the airlines. But then organizing started off right after 1985, that after the Red Onion Action, by the time in 1990, South Asian Network was created. And the reasons for that were also that the history of migration from South Asia, from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, has its own, people have been migrating since the U.S. Civil War, since the mid-1800s. And then there was all these transition period as well, but the most recent wave in the mid-60s after the Immigration Reform and Control Act was passed was that the bulk of the migration were people who were more so professional class. Okay. You see the stereotypical Indian and Pakistani doctor or the engineers and computer folks and all of that. And the reason was that they had facilities and they had the privilege of wealth. Mm-hmm. They were able to garner those high-level education and all of that. But, but what it turned into was more or less a very insular type community by kind of just taking on the role of an honorary Caucasian and pursuit of that wealth and thinking white and acting white without looking at it like what was going on at that time. The Civil Rights Movement, Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Movement, various other things. And the only socializing was happening was that inviting a Bollywood star from somewhere, music and all of that. So all of this but then as things were changing, myself coming to the U.S. as well, the whole class demographics changed in the early 70s to mid to late 1970s. So that's what led to the creation of South Asian Network, that there has to be a space where people of South Asian origin can come together and build that power on the ground and fight against all of these institutional discrimination and on the street. Hate crimes were going on as well. So post 9/11, hate crimes are going on. I've been called several names, from the N-word, the sand N-word, to everything else in between. And so that's how you okay, I'm coming after you.
Yeah.
How are you doing all this, by the way? How are you able to balance being a pilot, organizing, raising a child? What's your I just want to know personally, how the fuck were you doing this?
Yeah, I mean, there's and actually I had 2 daughters. The older one passed away when she was almost 5, so that was also. But she was at home, and she had certain medical conditions, so taking care of her. I mean, it was hectic. There was a time for 2 years when I was still building my airlines flying career as well, that you never see a day off.
Sure,
but it's also what since I was a kid, organizing was really the thing that I wanted to be doing. So it was almost like I think there's always, you're constantly discovering and exploring the self, and there's always these energies that you discover, maybe I'm tired, I'll sleep it out, but then you need to be back out there. Yeah. And it just became I don't know the word is passion or love or whatever, but it was just a duty.
Mental illness, some would say. Sometimes I feel when I'm I have to do all this, and I'm just there's something wrong with me. But it can feel that way is what I'm saying. Because sometimes you're just why do I want to keep doing this? I keep feeling like shit. But there's something there that, whether it's passion or whatever, that keeps you going. But sometimes it feels like I'm just crazy, and this makes sense to me.
It does have its own toll as well. So that's why I just walked away from my aviation career. I was, I still had 15 more years to go. And I remember walking into my chief pilot's office and saying I'm done, because, just wanted to continue to organize and be more present. And it's interesting that my union, the pilots union, they actually asked me to go see a counselor.
Oh, wow.
Wow, okay.
So they were we've never seen anybody that you're on top of the career, you're making so much money, you're getting so much this, that, and the other, and privileges, and I was nah, I know what I'm doing. We just want to see your emotional profile. So would you do that for the rest of the pilot community? I'm sure. So I went for 6 sessions.
Okay.
And sat through counseling, and the counselor finally said, "Yeah, you're done." And I'm yeah, I told him so. But that's where it is. So yeah, it just at that point, it was getting hectic in the sense that obviously it's post 9/11 as well. I'd fly a trip from Anchorage, Alaska, to Seoul, South Korea, or go to Tokyo or Sydney, and then within an hour or so, there's a conference call that you got to be in. So it also kind of just gets into, so I was all right, you ain't that young anymore. So things have to give. So that's what happened.
Were you ever up above, you're in the clouds and you're just seeing the land mass pass by? Was there ever a time where you're none of this fucking matters? I don't know, I just feel like if you'd be up, I'd be up there, I'd just be there's the same problems happening down there everywhere you go, right? Did you ever have any of those feelings? Or I guess what was the feeling you were feeling when you were flying high and then thinking about what you had to go back to and what the issues were, where you came from? What was that like?
Right. I would always I've been a wanderer all my life.
Sure.
An emotional and an intellectual nomad as well, if you can say, right? So, but I would feel the airplane at the bottom of my feet, you have your paws, so the paws of your foot, and it would just be one of those feelings, I'm sitting in this goddamn metal tube at 37,000 feet, and I'm looking at the beauty of the universe, which is just phenomenal. You would see so many times Northern Lights, for example, and then they change colors. Or you would just be navigating through a major thunderstorm and almost kind of, just threading a needle in the airplane, looking at where the lightning is coming from and the thunder is. And then you would boom out, and there you see the Milky Way. And then you would see far off on the North Pacific, just off of Russian coast or Soviet coast at the time, and there'll be volcanic activity going on. Wow. So these are just
wild.
Just incredible, and then going into different places as well. But what it did was, though, that you almost get to see over time the McDonaldization of the world.
Sure.
That was very interesting as well, how the U.S. marketing and propaganda is so pervasive around the world. So that's how all of a sudden, like, you would go to Seoul, or you would go any other place, like, different places in Europe and South America and other places and Asia. And all of a sudden, like, there are new McDonald's over there. And you could see the kids standing in line wrapped around blocks and blocks and blocks. So that also would come through, and, the whole militarization of the world as well, and global hegemony, as we use this language now.
Sure, yeah.
So a lot of that, I think I would say that I had the privilege of flying in, but having that keen eye to do the local assessment. But to your point also, like, just being out there in the natural universe, it was just a beautiful experience.
Yeah, and feeling it at your feet. I'll never forget that quote. It's amazing.
And so you're in LA, or you're in Long Beach at the time, right?
I was in Orange County, and then I moved to Long Beach about 23 years ago.
23 years ago.
Yeah.
And so moving on to the coalition, how does the coalition come to be? What prompts it? What were the events that kind of led up to
So I think both my work at South Asian Network and also building with the taxi workers and all, I mean, one thing is very clear is that state violence weaves through. And, policing of the individuals and policing of communities is happening on many, many different levels. So that was one piece, and that was the understanding. And the second thing was that, by 2010, and I've talked about it in the past as well, and Jason, you probably heard me say that. You're like, okay, there he goes again. That how by 2010, it was so clear and obvious that how counterterrorism and counterinsurgency tactics were being incorporated into domestic policing.
Yes.
And then, so I basically had been building around police brutality and state violence and all with several other folks. And so my brother, Pete White, I reached out to him and I says, this is something that we need to really pay attention. And then some of my other comrades, Susan Alva and Raul Norve, who've been major figures in the immigrant rights battle as well in Los Angeles, and then Becky Dennison, started talking to them. And then, which led to the creation of Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And one of the first fights was around the National Suspicious Activity Reporting Program, which part of that is the I Watch, See Something, Say Something program. And exactly what we had talked about, has been unfolding like that. But from the very get-go, the approach was, and the understanding was, that this is building power and an organizing agenda. This is not going in and looking at remedies around how people are being targeted through the legal lens or through legislative changes. So that's what had happened. And then spent a good, I would say, a few of us spent a good 6 to 8 months before becoming even active in the or going public with the coalition. Most of 2011 being out in the streets and really learning and understanding and checking our vocabulary around how people see surveillance. So talking to people on the streets, I mean, and then also locating ourselves in Skid Row, that how do we flip the script on surveillance itself? Like, typically, conventionally, it's seen as an invasion of privacy, that no, this is how race and poverty is policed. Because if we are talking about national security, then let's talk about this, particularly around being black and being extremely poor, and what happens with that. So being out on the streets, talk to people, what does being suspicious mean to them, talk to unhoused folks quite a bit, did like focus groups and even conversations, talk to day laborers, groups of day laborers, that what does See Something, Say Something play out for them. Right? Talk to young people coming out of cages, queer trans folks, undocumented folks, immigrants, immigrant youth. So that really helped in understanding that, okay, what is going to be our baseline in building this work? Which then helped in draw out some of the basic guidelines that this is not a moment in time, but a continuation of history. There's always a creation of the other. The enemy is always created.
Right, yeah.
And then our fight's really about human rights, not the sort of the white privileged universal declaration, but just as a part of the natural universe, and we claim our humanity. So that's what led to the creation of Stop LAPD Spying Coalition.
When did you first hear about them, Jason?
I had heard about them actually years before through Joy Tea. When I used to work at this place called Food Forward. Fuck Food Forward. But my former work, I actually quit that place 2 years ago today. Racist.
So wait, today?
Yes.
Was that when you did your big thread?
I didn't release the thread at the time, but
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
But I put together 2 threads on my former employer, exposing them for their racism and other bullshit that happened. But anyways, I had been working at Food Forward and working with their farmers market recovery program, and so we were recovering produce from different farmers markets throughout Los Angeles. And Joy Tea reached out as part of the Crenshaw food program, wanting to feed folks in the Crenshaw area, specifically at the YMCA. I'm forgetting the street that it's on right now. I'm blanking on it. But anyway, she had reached out about wanting to get fresh produce to provide produce for the community, because as we know, those are often forgotten neighborhoods. Those are needed needed communities, but oftentimes are forgotten when it comes to fresh produce. And so she reached out, and we were able to connect them with produce from the Brentwood Farmers Market and the Pacific Palisades Farmers Market for their Sunday distribution. And so one time I went down to check out the distribution, and at that time I saw some literature from the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition.
Gotta love the literature.
And so that was my first interacting with the coalition. And then obviously when I became more active, or when I became an organizer and was out in the streets, I'd seen and heard from Hamid at multiple marches and rallies, and really was drawn to the research, really the in-depth work that they do around the LAPD, exposing the LAPD for not only the surveillance, but the wide variety of harms that they're committing in our community. And so that's what really drew me to the coalition. Every Tuesday y'all have a webinar that is also very informative, geared around the different working groups that are within the coalition. And so it just felt like a place that I could come to, and I always learn something. Even to this day, I always learn something, whether I'm talking with Hamid or other members of the coalition. And so that was my first interaction with the coalition. And
Jyoti was a remarkable organizer. She first came to South Asian. She was at South Asian Network too, and she was 18. We had our first town hall right after 9/11 in October of that month, and then Jyoti became a key part of the South Asian Network. A fierce advocate and an organizer.
Yes.
She led our fight against the LAPD drones as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where is she now? What's she doing?
I haven't spoken with her for a while.
She is running a domestic violence shelter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So doing a lot of work around that.
So will you take us through some of the kind of bigger, achievements you guys have done, studies you've put out? Because I'm always kind of waiting to see the next big one. I think you guys released, what was the big one? Was it 2021?
Automating banishment.
Yeah, that was such an amazing thing. So take us through some of the work you guys have done over the years, and just kind of how it was to work on that stuff and release it. And I guess what the reception has been from, because obviously the reception from the movement is, oh, this is great, but has it sort of gone past the sphere of the movement, and have people outside of that reacted to it, whether positively or negatively?
Absolutely. I think I would say that more than the reports and the literature that we have put out, is that what I would really just, and I can't say enough about all the people who've been a part of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, that our little bit of a success, if we want to call it, has been that we have normalized the conversation around surveillance.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, how do people speak about it and hear themselves, and others do as well, because and that was a huge thing, because from there a whole bunch of things emanate as well, and come out, because typically surveillance was always a domain of the ACLUs of the world, and these kind of nonprofit First Amendment type law firms and other groups as well, where it would just have a limited response, and it's nothing new through COINTELPRO and PDID and Red Squads and everything else that has happened, but I think to really kind of just normalize this conversation, and then really building it on people's lived experiences was a first. And I think that's the kind of model that has been developed, that's the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, and really rooted on a very ground level as well. So from there on, that has been a consistent thing. So that was one. The other piece I would also say is that, again, that how, and the term used is intersectional in our movement as well, intersectional organizing, really kind of putting to kind of just building our fights again, that how nuanced is the impact of the police state on the youth. right? How nuanced it is on gender and sexuality. How nuanced does it get around housing? How nuanced does it get around public benefits? So that really then helped us cultivate relationships and understanding, which then led to, like, just building these fights. Our very first report was the People's Audit of Special Order 1, which was also the Suspicious Activity Reporting Program. So in that, kind of just breaking down the structures and everything else, like what is a fusion center? What are these spy centers? How information is being collected? So kind of just creating this step-by-step way so it can be consumed by people and understand as well, which then, just provides and opens up windows for various other things as well that it can be built upon. And then, and because it's been very fiercely abolitionist, that there is no compromises, there is no negotiation, because reform basically is rebranding.
Yes.
And that's what happens. And I'm reminded of our comrades in Colombia, Tolaposungo group, which is a trans sex workers group, and they always say reform is another uniform. So
damn, that's good.
Right? So I think that's and so the other piece being that just not negotiating and compromising on the values and principles. So that's another thing. And then from there on, I mean, I remember just being called out for people calling us, and I can totally understand some of the family members that as soon as the body cameras were introduced, we came out with a huge report against it. Like, no, this is bullshit. But this was also, the Michael Brown bill was also being passed in the U.S. Senate and various other things. So it's also both I mean, we know what the external fight is with the system. A lot of it has also been internal and really checking people out. So in a sense, like, how are we exposing the academy? What has been the role of the academia in being scribes for the empire, in being sort of functionaries of the state, by creating these intellectual frameworks, whether it's eugenics, or it's predictive policing.
Right.
So building on that as well. So looking at it as Jason was saying, piecemeal as well, and breaking and splicing it up, because the reason being also, and there's also, and the reasons build themselves as well, is, Albert, that what is happening is that there's complete datafication of our bodies going on. That our bodies are being spliced up into a gazillion forms of data points, and each one of them is up for monetization. Each one of them is up for to stalk us. Each one of them is there, which provides fodder to criminalize us.
Sure.
So that's been the details and the depth. And I mean, I can say with a lot of confidence, because we've always said that because what we are up against has tremendous amount of resources. The state, LAPD has $40 million budget for their propaganda.
Yeah.
Right. So we were also very, very substantive as well. Like, crossing our T's and dotting our I's, but also very much saying that no, our community's history is our truth. That is our guide over here. So I think it has sort of kind of created this model as well. And I think, and I'll wrap this comment by saying that, then there are moments that you learn, so how echoes of your work are created. Mm-hmm. So most recently, I was invited to be in Wales at Cardiff University to go speak.
Shit, you were in Wales?
Yeah.
That's tight. I love that.
So
Wales?
I've never been to Wales.
So somebody, and this was a conference. I mean, there's a lot of academics there as well. So this professor from Andalusia, which is south of Spain, teaches at Cordoba University, came up to me and he says that, you all have developed this abolitionist tool for organizing called the algorithmic ecology.
Yes.
And he says that we have translated that into Spanish and we've made a part of our curriculum in Cordoba University.
Wow.
So, and they're using that framework to then look at smart borders and governance of migrants. That how that is happening. So what is the ecology that is so the whole idea is that you draw the whole ecology and it helps you unpack the stuff so you can target your fight accordingly as well.
Damn.
It's powerful. It's powerful to know that the work that y'all are doing, even the work of other organizers here in Los Angeles, that action, that piece of research that you put out can have, these long-term effects, right? I mean, you go back and look at some of the stuff that people like Dhoruba bin Wahad and, other leaders in the Black Panther Party. That
Sure.
I still read those things today, and I'm very much inspired. And it's really, something that I know from Daruba bin Wahad that we were repeating quite a bit when we recorded our test run was like that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure as hell rhymes.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we already know that a lot of the fights that we're fighting right now have been fought in the past. And so how can we learn from that? And then also knowing that, this information that you guys put out, this research that you have, to know that it's being translated into Spanish and now it's being used for smartboard and these types of things is very powerful and a testament to like knowing that even though your work might not be accepted or applauded or even what's the word I'm looking for, really understood at the moment, that might happen in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years.
And they have never, LAPD has never dared to come back and said, no, your information is not correct. Yeah. I mean, not even once have they even, like, with everything that they have. Because I think it's also, and going back to Black Panthers, I mean, I think for myself, the inspiration also comes from just very adamantly how Hampton would talk about popular education. Mm-hmm. That's where the power lies. Yep. We have to have this. And this was also, which became a model, at least for myself and many people in the coalition, that it's about collective unpacking and collective learning. So even automating banishment, Albert had about 26 writers to it.
Sorry, I couldn't remember the name. You will have to forgive me.
No. Automating banishment, the surveillance and policing of looted land.
Oh, yes,
and that's also another example about looking at it, that how we expose conspiracies and how land is central. Yeah. Land is central. And then how land is made, just beneath your feet. Mm-hmm. It's criminalized. So that's what happens in Skid Row. Yeah. That's what happens, at how you then earmark land and designate it as crime triggers. Which is like, opens it up for open season of violence on the communities and local residents. How it is designated as a crime trigger, and we discovered emails between developers and the city attorney's office, how this was being used very effectively to demonize, like in South Central Los Angeles, grandma and grandpa's, their retirement money is coming from a fourplex. Just rental units. But then that gets criminalized, and next thing you know, they deploy these citywide nuisance abatement programs and bring these injunctions because the developer is salivating on that, and then they're basically forced to move out and sell it, and then it turns into a luxury apartment complex. So I think that to your question, going back, that how is it moving, it is very much like, the 2040 plan. In Skid Row that is going on, that realizing in the Skid Row now there are other plans too. So how these hotels and these buildings were then designated, so it informs our organizing quite a bit as well. So that's what the real goal is, that how do we build that power on the ground, and then how people are able to take action and take that collective action. And which one of the things happened was that it took us, and here I'm going to honor my dear friend and comrade, Jamie Garcia, who is a registered nurse, right, but led our fight against predictive policing, which we were able to dismantle over the years, like, part of it in 2019 and part of it in 2020, how we were able to keep drones grounded. So there's a lot of street action involved. Yeah. There's a lot of direct action involved. And there's a lot of, debunking and publicly discrediting, going after these people as well, completely debunking their narrative, trashing the fuck out of it. And, and then that's what really that's where power lies.
I'm fascinated by how they're, policing and police in the state kind of sell people on these ways of surveillance, right? So they always kind of package them in a way that's like kind of cute and fun. And so the one thing that kind of stands out to me is when I remember reading about the Olympics and how they were like, oh, when the 2028 Olympics come here, like, you're not going to have a ticket. Your face is going to be your ticket. Sure. Like, they're selling facial recognition as this fun, super cool, kind of futuristic thing. But obviously we know that that's like horrifying, that Absolutely. If you're able to go and get into somewhere and they just know that you're there because you bought a ticket, that's pretty fucked up. So would you talk to us about kind of the tactics that they've been taking to sell it to the general public, and how the public has really kind of, in a lot of ways, eaten it up?
Right. I mean, I think it for that too, I'll go back to very basics. And today I was having a conversation with somebody, and this was about propaganda and propaganda. Yep. And I heard myself saying that the very existence of police is a propaganda. We have to start from that point.
Wow. Okay.
That just the whole institutionalization of that. Of course, we talk about slave patrols. Of course, we talk about recovery of property, which happens to be a human body. But that's the narrative within the white supremacist system, and to preserve that. And the propaganda is to white people. We also have to look at it that for you to maintain your privilege. And kind of just and to exercise that privilege, you need this safety from them. Now, who the them is, it's the creation of the other, right? So where the them comes
that's
in.
right.
Exactly. I mean, here, here we are.
Yeah,
so
right.
we are the other. I mean, that's almost the band that we can create. So I think that's where we have to go back, and now how it shapes it takes, because obviously facial recognition is new stuff, like 20, 30 years old, but this kind of propaganda has been going on forever. So public safety becomes a major issue as well.
Right.
That, well, at least we will know now you're coming into this huge stadium and all of that. And if there's somebody, and then what we're doing is that we're doing real-time facial recognition. As soon as that information goes into the system goes into an overdrive and starts sucking information out about people, including yourself, that what else have you been up to? So which then leads people to then immediately go on defensive and say, I have nothing to hide. Right. So in a sense, it's serving multiple purposes as well, like reinforcing control. But it's also the state is the largest data broker as well.
Right. Yeah.
Because when you look at it, and we cannot not speak about corporate mafia, that how much monetization is being done, how this is being, so where does that data go, how Google uses this thing and various other companies, and how experimentation happens on our lives as well. So yeah, I mean that's I just kind of summarized it real quickly, but there's much to be said. But I think that's how it sells.
Yeah, and again, it's seen as this innocuous thing, but like people in the know. So I guess how do you talk to people who are not in the movement about this stuff? How do you kind of like try to sell them on this stuff? I mean, I'm assuming you talk to people who are not just like rabble rousers like us, right? How do you talk to them about this stuff? How do you make them understand that, like, no, the thing on your phone that you think is a fun tool or whatever is actually being used to like fuck with you, or there's a file on you somewhere? How do you talk to them about that stuff?
I mean, I think first of all, now you're talking to the youngest of 6 kids.
Okay.
So being annoying was my forte.
Okay.
I had to.
Sure. Yeah.
And just to be talkative and be annoying was how I survived my siblings, right? So I think, and it's also, that's one thing, and then also, like for example, my social circles who are Pakistanis.
Sure.
So knowing that the assault is going on, but you're turning that switch off because you want to be seen white and an honorary Caucasian.
Sure.
I've used this term before as well. So how consistently you stick with what you're saying. It goes back to the old thing that first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, and then they get angry, and then we win. So over many, many, many years, even with South Asian Network and that organizing, first people would say, well, you have a mission. You're going to run for office. And I'm like, I don't fucking run for office. That's not. Or like, just you want to be seen, well, this, that, and the other. I'm like, whatever. So you just stay consistent.
Sure.
And you just keep on speaking about it, and you keep on making people uncomfortable. Because what you're sharing is reality. And how people just kind of close their eyes from that or shut it off, you just kind of want to reopen those windows. And now, obviously, I hear the same friends over 30 years now speaking about, yeah, man, this is really fucked up. This is really fucked up.
Yeah.
And still being defensive about it. But yet, I'm like, okay, but yet, what happens there too? No, we're sitting in Long Beach. Let's talk about here.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm not living in Pakistan. I don't have to buy tomatoes and onions. So I don't know how the system is going. I mean, of course I do, but I can't with fluency be critical about it because it's just going to be a BS. So I think that's also, with that in mind, the consistency and staying on course and kind of just almost pushing back and challenging people, but getting them to think for themselves as well.
Yeah, slowly chipping away at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I've been trying to do that with some of my friends who are kind of non-political, and like they've come to stuff that I've done, and I can always see every time I talk about something, their heads nod a little more.
Yeah.
But they're still kind of, and listen, we all know, like, every sort of subset of people have the people who like are weirdly conservative. So like, I have family members who are super like, oh, even though like, hey, we all lost a family member to police violence, they're still kind of like, yeah, but policing is, they try to kind of do the mental gymnastics as to why they won't come out against it. So that, I mean, that's just, to me, trying to talk to people about this stuff is frustrating because some people just don't want to, once you sort of peel the layers back, you find a lot of horrifying shit,
Absolutely. I mean, like, for example, I have a lot of cops in my family in Pakistan.
Really? Wow.
Close family, because that's the only career that they see. Either you go into the military, especially if you come from a farm or a peasant. So you're recruited in the military or you go to the police, some government job, right?
Yep.
And that's the only way people kind of claim their respect as well, because otherwise, class system and caste system is very heavy, right? And businesses and all of that, you don't have the money to do that. So I think it's also, and I think this is where I would bring in abolition. How do we embody abolition? What is our journey like? There is no, like you're saying, chipping away. There is no delete button. There is no on-off switch, right? And if we keep it on a very baseline level, I mean, like, abolition is about ending harm. And so how then you speak about it, like it's a multi-generational journey towards the abolition of harm. And then where is the harm coming from? So when you sort of speak about it in those terms, like, these are the sources of harm. This is why the institution was created. Now you tell me, has it not caused harm? Then people sit there and like, yeah, it does. Okay. So is it still causing harm? Like one example we give of the LAPD, it's been in existence since 1869. So if it's still trying to build trust in the community 154 years later, then something is fundamentally flawed.
Yeah, they'll get there someday.
Right?
I hear the first 200 years are a little rough.
Exactly.
There we go. Yeah, based on the United States, right?
Yeah. Damn, that's why. So do you talk to these people? Do they? I mean, so what do they make of what you do? Do you even tell them? Like,
I mean, it's gone from like, what do you do anyways?
Sure.
To like, oh shit, man. So can you let's just get together. No, I gotta go somewhere. And then it was more like, you're married to that thing, and you're this thing and that thing, and like, now people have recognized, and it's taken. So it's again that abolitionist thing as well. That the way I see that is like, how do I draw parallels with my own journey as well? Because for me, abolition has been a journey of unlearning.
Yes. Of course. Yeah. 1,000%. Yeah.
A lot of unlearning. Yep. So it's also like, how do I share that I can help facilitate that unlearning in others as well without cussing and being like, no, you should fuck you and you should do that. Like, okay. I mean, not to say using that as well, right? And getting into each other's face. But because, no, I'm not going to, and it's been very clear with our friends for several years now that I will not tolerate racism. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just absolutely, unacceptable.
Yeah.
So I've shut people out in very large gatherings as well, in family gatherings. So I think there's also this thing that, this motherfucker is wild. So just, let's just not piss him off. But also people, like, you could see that transformation taking place. I mean, myself as well.
Jason, do you have family members who kind of don't understand what you do or disagree with you?
100%. I have family members that are Trump supporters that live in Alabama.
Wow.
That support Trump. I'll put it out there. My dad was in the military for 29 years. I grew up overseas. Lived in Pakistan for 2 years, Thailand for 2 years, Bolivia for 3 years, 4 years in Morocco. I very much grew up under believing that, the U.S. was a good place and that people in the military were doing good things. And then it wasn't until, again, I had that unlearning when I lived in Morocco. And when 9/11 happened, I remember that day I was like, oh, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. I was 13 at the time.
Oh, okay.
And you grow up amongst all these military people, and you say, oh, as soon as I'm 18, I'm joining the Marine Corps. I'm gonna go out there and fight and blah blah blah. And then you learn, and then the Iraq War came upon, and then you start seeing all the protests, and you're like hundreds of thousands of people in the streets, and you're saying, well, damn, there's something's not tracking here. And again, you start to unlearn, and then you're learning the different histories of these countries, and you learn about all the fuckery that happened in Central America and South America and Asia and all these other places. And then so you have those conversations. I would have conversations with my dad about hey, does the military need $700 billion? Like, why is there 32 bases or military installations in Japan? Is that necessary to have anymore? And so I've definitely had conversations. I don't speak with my dad because of our, for personal reasons, but also because of our political disagreements. And I've also lost other family, not lost, but have lost touch with other family members because, they'd be, posting racial shit on Facebook, or, they love them some Trump.
Yeah, at a certain point too, when you're in this work, you just kind of are like, these are my principles, and I don't want to, even like, and this is kind of a dumb thing, but like I, have been on like dating apps recently, and I'm like, I put up there, I'm like, I don't want to date cop supporters. I'm an abolitionist. Like, maybe that's like jumping the gun a little bit, but for me, I'm like, I'm just not going to ever move from that, right? That's my principle. So it's like, I don't know. It's just, I always think about these things about over the long run of like, having to stick to your principles, and then having to also like, I don't know, contend with the fact that like people in your family or people around you are not always going to be on your side about stuff.
Sure. Just like Jason, my growing up in a family, like I said, there was nothing else. My dad ran away from home when he was 13. Going back way back when in the Indian Army, and getting recruited. And then during partition, a lot of shit happened. Then he was a cop. Because that's the only thing he could do. But he was also very adamant, though. He told all 6 of us that none of my kids would ever do this. Because he said that, this is not about public service. You are at the service of the executive.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then what we'll do is like, then he says that when you put that uniform on and go to work, you check your humanity, leave your humanity at home. And then that's where you have to go, because that's exactly what you're expected to do.
Yeah.
Right. So, so absolutely. I think in this journey about abolition, we've all gone through our own transformation and our unlearning process as well. And I think that's what sort of sometimes I also look at the movement as well, because abolition is becoming pretty fashionable, and it has to.
Yeah, that's very true.
But I hope that people are true to that, and really kind of just invest their time and emotion and kind of be on that journey, because it's a lifetime journey.
But I think that the fear that I have is that it's going to be co-opted, right? Like abolition, it's like
foundations are funding conferences on abolition. There we go.
Yeah, but also people are going to come in and say, oh yeah, abolition, sure, it means this, but it could also mean, and then it just gets watered down.
Exactly.
That's where I feel like, during my campaign cycle last year, it was like really popular to say you're an abolitionist, but then act differently or try to redefine what you think abolition is. So that to me is always the, you want more people to know about it, but the more people that know about it, the more people that can like fuck with it and then come up with their own weird way of thinking about that stuff. But whatever, sorry.
There's quite a few reformers within the movement and within political spaces that call themselves abolitionists.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fucked up. But
I think the challenge always
guys,
is...
we're the only 3 real abolitionists in LA.
Okay. Calm down.
But it's also like, absolutely the journey is that how do you embody abolition?
Sure, yeah.
And what does it mean? And that's where the unlearning comes in as well. Because, obviously for ourselves, I'm a product of patriarchy.
Sure.
How that plays out. Still, once in a while there's a knock on the shoulder saying like, yo, where did that thought come from? Mm-hmm. What's going on over here? So I think in a sense that have we all actualized and arrived? No. That'll be a fool's paradise. But to be very conscious about it, and yet to remind oneself that no, this is and also I think that's where also in organizing and really building that power on the ground, one also has to really kind of look at one's expectation as well, because I see the role of Stop LAPD Spying Coalition really continuing on its journey to facilitate and help unpack that what is the deeply intersectional way that how race and poverty and suspect bodies are policed. And that's where, whether it's housing, whether it's public benefits, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's gender violence, whether it's sex work, all of these things very much are informed by data collection and information sharing environment and what we call the stalker state. So I think I hope that that's the role that the coalition continues to play in the movement as well.
Speaking about data collection, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition has been in the news as of late for the Watch the Watchers website that was put out.
That's right, yeah.
How important of a tool and what kind of feedback have you gotten so far since the website was launched?
So besides the death threats and all of that, we're going to get phone calls, which is nothing new.
Yeah.
Shit was right post 9/11 and even before that too. So for example, Jason, the second day after we released that, we got an email from some woman saying that this motherfucker raped me. So and so, thank you so much for doing that. And then similarly, other emails came through as well. Like, you know, just, and some of them I shared them as well on our coordinating team meetings too. So I think it's a continuing part of what we launched back in 2014 about Watch the Watchers, of putting the camera on the police from different angles and documenting everything they do. So this was naturally the next phase of that as well. And it just came through. I mean, you know, when Ben Camacho had filed for public records, the journalist with NOC LA, they were not releasing. Shakir, who was a part of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, an attorney, took that public records case, went after, and the judge approved that, so it came through public records. So I think it is critical. It is absolutely necessary. It's almost like, you know, just we're not here to be. What is that thing that one website you go to where people rate food and restaurants and
Yelp?
Yeah, this ain't Yelp for cops. This is not Yelp for cops. It's really about know the local cops.
Yes.
See what I mean? Just now, I mean, again, Karen Bass, who's completely serving the cops and completely just taken into, and they're basically just running circles around that. And it's also like, you know, I mean, the way Karen Bass has operated as well. So I think it is critical on many different levels at where the resources are going. That's why it was important to post their salaries as well. You know, I mean, when you do the math, last year's budget, you know, the LAPD's budget was $3.4 billion, and we're not even counting federal grants and all the donations and monies that are raised as well. Whereas the Office of Youth Development was $1.2 million.
Wow.
So that's like if you add 6 or 7 zeros, so that's another piece. And then locally, like who's engaging in violence? What's the face behind it? And it's a counter-surveillance operation as well. And we continue to keep on building it. We are hoping that people take it on because we don't have the capacity to print these booklets. So we created this booklet for Central Station and kind of just showed it to the residents locally. They were very happy about it. So I think it serves many purposes as well.
One, you know what? If they're on Yelp, 1 star. Every cop
There we go.
gets 1 star.
Is there like a negative star or no star?
I guess no, you have to, like, you can't give a place 0 stars. So, you know, Yelp is fucked up.
Gotcha.
That's really the lesson today.
And so the records that you got was from Public Records Act requests.
Yes.
That Ben Camacho had filed.
Yes.
Public Records PRAs, as we'll shorten them to, PRA requests. You've gotten a lot of information the coalition has over the years through PRAs, and can you kind of touch on the importance of it, because I feel like it's not something that's really utilized by a lot of activists and organizers.
No, it's not, and I think that's why it's crucial that how do we weaponize this information, because I think what happens is otherwise our fight becomes very narrow as well. We're not looking at the whole ecology, going back to the algorithmic ecology as well. So I think in order to do like really community-based research, we have to start off with like, you know, this policy is bad, but what is the impact on the community? How these policies are being formulated? What kind of programmatic shapes it takes? What is the thinking behind it? How much money is allocated to that? Because then what it does is it just helps us in understanding our fight. So up until now, we have sued the LAPD 10 times. We have won 6 or 7 lawsuits. There's 3 still in process, and we'll continue to do that. And I think that's what happened is that, and it goes back to the coalition's work, that, you know, the old saying that you haven't even heard us yet, what we have to say. But here's your bullshit. Here's your fuckery. Here's your violence. And this is coming from you all. And this is how it is unleashed on the community. Where is it unleashed? How is it unleashed? How that targeting happens. I mean, automating banishment we were talking about. All of these things, these conspiracies were exposed from the public records. All the emails that they came. And I think and we've created this one model as well, that it's a collective process. I remember filing for public records on predictive policing. So the community comes together and we're like, what do we want to know? And somebody said, I just want to know what are they thinking about this thing? What is their thought process? So how do you get that information? And we realized that this process is being started through a grant from DOJ, Department of Justice. So we filed for their grant application through public records.
Wow.
And that helped us understand, like, okay, so what are you proposing? What is this bullshit for, this pseudoscience? So I think there is definitely a methodology to that, but it's very much rooted in community impact and community histories.
It's really information that that they should just put out there by themselves, right?
Yeah.
Right.
We shouldn't be the ones having to request it. We shouldn't have to wait months upon
But here's
months.
the deal also a little bit on that, because we, like, for example, we actively organize against proposal for transparency and auditing and reporting and all of that, because that's very reformist, right?
Yes.
But this is because what they would put out, it's a lie. I mean, we don't just whatever, like, so, okay, so let's have our own transparency.
Yeah.
And we even put a zine out on that as well. And, I mean, sometimes it's also said, and this is Ruthie Gilmore who talks about it, like, we're using the master's tools.
Yep.
But she talks about it like the master's is with an apostrophe over there. So this is, if this is a tool, then let's flip the script on the same tool as well. And let's use it to our benefit too, because this is what then leads to that, broad-based community awareness and education, for popular education, for political education as well. So definitely I think we've really weaponized that and created a new model of research, community-based research as well.
Yeah, and exactly what you were saying was, they oftentimes put out lies. They often put out, even with body-worn video.
Exactly.
Today it was released, or the LA Times reported that one of the officers that had murdered a community member last summer had talked about, after they had shot him, had talked about getting overtime. About
Exactly.
Yeah, and so, but that wasn't released when the body-worn video, when their propaganda was put out, the critical incident videos, as they call them, which is narrated by usually.
It's a whole Hollywoodization.
Oh yeah, who's that person who does them?
It used to be Stacey Spell, now it's Kelly Muniz.
Oh, Kelly Muniz is doing that. Okay.
Yeah, Kelly Muniz is doing it now, and so that wasn't put out. Multiple families have requested for the full body-worn videos from when it comes to Keenan Anderson or others, and they'll never release that kind of stuff because, again, like you said, it's used for their propaganda. It's used for them to tell their stories. But yeah, public records, file them shits.
Absolutely.
I always enjoy filing ones around.
And you don't need lawyers at all.
Yeah.
You don't, exactly. Well, at times you do, right? Because you've had to sue.
Absolutely. I mean, they're critical in this fight, but they're not the primary
Exactly.
lead on
Exactly. But it is interesting to see kind of the inner workings. For example, I filed a couple PRAs with the police commission around Steve Sobroff, and I was able to uncover, some of the Housing for Hires program, which is a program that's being put on, being financed by the LA Police Foundation, which is providing a $24,000 subsidy for new recruits. It's over a 2-year period, so they get so it's over a 2-year period.
$1,000 a month, is that what it breaks down
Yes,
to?
$1,000 a month because LA is so unaffordable to live in, and so I also want to note that those officers, or those fucking pigs, are getting that $24,000 housing subsidy on top of the bonus that they're getting, right?
Absolutely.
And then they just negotiated this new deal where they're going to get $86,000 a year, and instead of getting a retention bonus in their 10th year, then I'll be getting that in their second year. So there's all this.
And then imagine the hourly rate, because we have to factor in overtime as well.
Yes.
Overtime is such a big fucking thing.
Right. $300,000 overtime, $200,000 overtime. So watch the Watchers, for example. I remember a few months ago, just a couple of months after it was released, the Chinatown Community for Economic Development, CCED, had gone and taken over the mayor's house outside. And then the cops showed up in riot gear. So what we did was we looked at their nameplate and we started announcing that, here's so-and-so, and she made $200,000 and $300,000 and all those numbers. So slowly you could see them stepping backwards and kind of moving away, because now we were exposing them.
Yeah, I think it's I think we need to get as many of those out there, because they are trying to fight back and say, well, we shouldn't have released that, and trying to prosecute people for doing that. So the beauty of this, though, is that when these records are out, they will live on the internet forever.
Absolutely.
We are, I have the Watchers in a folder on my computer. It's never leaving my computer. I'm always going to have it. So get those fucking things and put them out there, because otherwise they will.
Using it.
Yeah,
I mean, we've been approached by journalists as well. Researchers are using it as well, and so it's definitely it's a great organizing tool and an information tool as well.
And the pictures are readily available, but there are some media entities, the bigger ones, scribes of the state, as you would describe them, that still don't put out the picture of an LAPD officer that has been arrested for rape.
Absolutely.
Or, some type of other harm that they've committed in our communities.
Absolutely.
But, somebody who's stopped for a traffic stop and gets arrested or whatever, put their fucking photo everywhere you can.
Plastered, yep.
It's wild how that, it's wild.
Hamid, there was one time, and I can't remember what action it was at, you were standing in the middle. There was City Hall, there was a city attorney's office, LAPD, and LA Times, and you said something. You broke it down. What's the way you broke it down?
I said, so there was a court system, the
Yes.
LA Times. So I said, this is where they legislate, this is where they adjudicate, and this is where they enforce. And there are the scribes for the empire.
There we go.
So it was really kind of being surrounded by this kind of fake power, is what they claim. But really, I mean, we were there saying big fuck you. We will dismantle it and take it down.
Beautiful.
You're like a learned ass dude, huh?
No, man.
Scribes, I just love hearing you talk.
Look,
you just have such a way of communicating. I really am in love with it. It's amazing.
I cheated on my BA finals. Truth.
Okay.
Because
Awesome.
I said, and econ was my major. I'm like, what the heck? What am I going to study? I mean, I know this is a recipe to just monetize and fuck up our lives.
Yeah.
So I ended up cheating on my BA final.
Hey, whatever.
I got a degree from Government College Lahore. So at least I have a BA.
I think we should probably wrap it up.
Sounds
What do you
good.
think?
Yeah.
Do you want to ask your last? Do you have a last question?
No, I wanted to know, what are the ways people can tap in? Will we ever see you on Twitter, Instagram, Spill?
I don't even
Blue Sky.
know.
I've got 2 Blue Sky codes. You can have one if you want.
You know why? Here's what happened. So many years ago, the coalition got a Facebook account.
Okay.
Right? So now, because my email was used, so I couldn't log on, and something happened and something popped up on my email.
Of course.
So now I thought that one of the earliest volunteers, Cookie, I mean, just an amazing person, I thought that Cookie used my credit card to get a Facebook account. I had no clue it was for free.
Okay.
So I put in Hamid as first name and Khan as last name or something. First I put stop LAPD and then last name, nothing. So I just put my name, so it turned into my name. So I'm calling people at 2 a.m. and they're like, what the fuck did you do now? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I changed our whole Facebook.
Yeah.
So that's why if you go to our Facebook account, it shows up at Hamid Khan.
Oh, okay.
And Facebook never turned it around, never switched it back.
Okay.
Wow.
So, it is, I mean, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, I mean, any cheap thrill I want to get is out of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition accounts.
Did you ever log in there and just go crazy?
I mean, I do. So, I mean, I've checked it out and sometimes okay. But I think the way we do it is it's a collective piece that any tweet or Instagram post that comes out, we all discuss that.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, we should fucking do that too.
Myself, we discussed that. Okay, so what are we doing with that?
Yeah,
it's very clear target. So no, I don't foresee myself having my own personal accounts.
I think you could do a daily Hamid affirmation. Say some
that.
inspiring stuff. I don't know. Think about it. I have a Blue Sky code, so again, if you want it.
No, I think my philosophy is, and this is how we use street language, how you grow up around. So in Pakistan, it was being annoying was giving somebody, because tuberculosis, TB, was very prevalent.
Okay.
So when somebody with TB, then when they cough, their sides hurt. So our thing, even with the LAPD, is I always say let's give the system TB.
Okay.
And that's where the consistency comes in, and consistency comes in. When we go to the police commission, I see when Jason walks in, they look at us and they're like, we thought you all were fucking dead. Why are you still here?
Yep.
Right? So just constantly giving them TB.
Yep.
Sorry, I have to ask this because I asked this of you or of a panel at the BLM 10-year anniversary. How do you achieve longevity in this game? We want to become elders in this movement. We want to be around for a long time. We want to impart whatever knowledge we learn from the elders of today, but later on down the line. So how do you make it so you last in this movement and be effective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also not to stress oneself out with expectations. It's going to happen today or yesterday. No, it's not. And the joy of this, just multi-generational movement building, I think that is extremely joyful. So I think to do that, and this is where I'm reminded of कि क़त्ल गाहों से चुन के हमारे अलम और निकलेंगे उस शाख के काफ़िले, that from these killing fields shall rise the lovers of freedom, picking up the banners from the fallen ones, right? Wow. So I think that's the beauty of which really just is very sort of robust and very inspirational. And you just keep on we just finished a whole thing that now we are working with 1st through 4th graders.
Wow.
And
Very
then
cool.
we had a whole group of high school students from Fairfax High who spent the summer with us. Now we're going back to first through fourth and fifth graders, this time in Watts. So I think that's where, like, you know, again, it's a child in you that comes out. It's the adult in you. It's the elder in you. It's the partner in you. It's the organizer in you. So I think, again, having that whole sort of I'm not trying to be pantheistic about universality or oneness, but it's one of those things that how do you encompass that, how do you embody that, and how do you challenge yourself?
I love that.
And as we sign off, what are some ways that people can tap in with the Stop LAPD Spying?
Yeah, so let's talk about social media at Stop LAPD Spying. I know that.
You guys are great on there. Again, very vital information. So follow them.
Thank you. And then our website, stoplapdspying.org, or email us at stoplapdspying@gmail.com and join the fight.
Hell yeah, you heard him.
Sweet. Well, fuck the LAPD.
That's right.
Fuck the LAPD,
you can reach us at peoplecitypropaganda@gmail.com if you want to leave us a line, suggest a guest, tell us how we're doing, anything like that. Rate and review us on Spotify and the Apple Podcast app. We need those 5 stars if you like the show.
Absolutely. Shout out to Adam Smith for a theme song.
He's amazing. We love him. We love him. He's one of the good white people.
Yes.
Shout out to Adam Smith.
Yes. Say that again. Yeah. Exactly.
Hey, we'll catch you soon.
All right, bye.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
We did, hour and 20. Okay. That's not bad.